Have you ever wondered why those who seem endlessly grateful, those who bend their heads in constant thanks, rarely rise to command, rarely taste the intoxicating essence of power? Imagine a world where every nod, every polite smile, every whispered thank you is not a sign of virtue but a chain, a subtle invisible leash that binds the mind, the ambition, and the soul. Gratitude, in its polished and noble form, is sold to you as a blessing, a pathway to inner peace, a moral virtue that elevates the spirit. But I ask you, what is virtue if it becomes your prison? What is morality if it diminishes your capacity to dominate, to seize, to wield influence without hesitation? Power is not given, it is taken. Power does not linger in the hands of the meek, the compliant, or the excessively grateful. It resides with those who understand the shadow, who navigate human nature like a master cartographer, charting desire, envy, fear, and weakness. Look around you and observe the subtle currents. The man who is grateful for every small gift, every minor concession, every superficial compliment is, in reality, a man who has surrendered control. Gratitude softens the edge of ambition. It tempers rage into tolerance, cunning into submission, and desire into polite acquiescence. Each time you whisper thank you for a favor you could have demanded, you are paying a toll to the world, and it is a toll you never reclaim. Those who champion gratitude will tell you it opens doors, that it nurtures relationships, that it softens hearts. But I see what lies beneath. The doors they open are not gateways to dominance, but corridors lined with chains. The hearts they soften are not allies, but cages. And the most dangerous thing of all is that they do not see it. They believe themselves liberated, while the world quietly gathers the spoils from their compliance. In the shadows of power, gratitude becomes a mask, a cloak that hides submission. It is the polite nod of a servant to a master, the careful smile of a diplomat to a king, the silent concession of one who fears the consequences of desire. Consider this: the powerful do not wait for the world to hand them opportunity. They do not pause to thank the universe for each step, for each ally, for each stroke of fortune. No, they take, they demand, they orchestrate. Gratitude, in its conventional form, is a liability, a soft hand extended in expectation of reciprocity, a confession that you recognize hierarchy and accept it. And in doing so, you relinquish the very leverage that could have been yours. The psychology of gratitude is simple yet insidious. When you cultivate thankfulness, you train your mind to value external validation, to acknowledge favors, to see the world through the lens of reciprocity. Reciprocity, my dear listener, is the tool of the cautious, the weak, the easily manipulated. The ambitious do not barter in gratitude. They operate in the economy of advantage, leverage, and strategic foresight. They see people not as friends to be thanked, but as instruments to be understood, assessed, and when necessary, bent. Every time you acknowledge a debt, no matter how trivial, you etch a mark upon your psyche, a note that says, I owe, I am beholden, I am vulnerable. And vulnerability is a scent that the predator can detect from miles away. History is littered with those who fell victim to this subtle trap. The diplomat who thanked too often, the general who admired the loyalty of his soldiers rather than commanding it, the ruler who praised the counsel of advisers rather than manipulating it. They all fell. They mistook gratitude for goodwill, politeness for strength, civility for competence. And the world, indifferent and unrelenting, capitalized on it. In their absence of ruthlessness, others rose. In their measured thanks, others seized opportunity. In their moral comfort, the ambitious forged empires from chaos. What separates the ruler from the ruled is not kindness, not morality, not even brilliance. It is the unflinching understanding that gratitude is a tool to be wielded sparingly, manipulated strategically, and, when necessary, discarded entirely. Now, do not mistake me. I am not preaching cruelty for its own sake. I am exposing truth. The world is neither fair nor virtuous. Those who survive, who dominate, who imprint their will upon history, are those who have understood the mechanisms of influence, the patterns of desire, and the weaknesses of men. Gratitude, when practiced without strategy, becomes a mirror of your limitations. It reflects what you cannot take, what you cannot demand, what you cannot manipulate. And if you are not careful, you will live your life perpetually in the reflection of your own constraints, applauding the fortune and cunning of others, while your own potential rots, shackled by manners and moral pretenses. Think of the chessboard. but one where the pieces are not plastic, but men and women, each move a negotiation, each gesture a signal, each smile a calculated deception. The grateful player opens with a nod, acknowledges a minor concession, thanks the opponent for a feint, and loses the initiative before the game even begins. The strategic player feigns gratitude when necessary, conceals ambition behind humility, but never allows a sense of obligation to compromise the next move. Gratitude is not abandoned. It is weaponized, restrained, and measured, for its indiscriminate use is a leash, and power, true power, is incompatible with leashes. Consider the subtle ways in which society binds you with gratitude. Say thank you. They command, appreciate your blessings, acknowledge your teachers, respect your elders, and you comply, day after day, habit after habit, and in doing so, you are trained to defer, to yield, to accept limitations imposed by others. Every polite acknowledgement is a mental contract, every softened word a tacit admission of inferiority. You have been conditioned to seek approval, to value recognition, and to hesitate before claiming what is yours. It is no accident that the world celebrates thankfulness while vilifying ambition, patience, and ruthless calculation. You are rewarded for submission and punished for the audacity to dominate. But what if you understood this mechanism? What if, for a moment, you stripped away the veneer of virtue and observed gratitude not as a moral imperative, but as a strategic variable? You would see that the same words that bind can be used to manipulate. You would see that every thankless act, every refusal to yield, every calculated silence is an assertion of control. You would see that those who command the world rarely ask permission, rarely seek favor, rarely bow in thanks. And you would understand, at last, that the road to influence is paved with selective courtesy, measured acknowledgement, and the deliberate withholding of indebtedness. You are beginning to see, are you not? The mask of gratitude is neither benign nor innocent. It is a leash, a trap, a slow erosion of power and agency. To exist perpetually in its glow is to surrender silently, to allow ambition to stagnate, and to invite the clever, the ruthless, and the cunning to navigate your world while you nod, smile, and whisper thanks. The question that lingers, the one that pierces the veneer of comfort, is this: will you continue to pay homage to the invisible chains of thankfulness, or will you awaken to the truth that gratitude, untempered and unmeasured, is a gift to those who would see you powerless? And so, as you reflect on the life you lead, ask yourself, in the quiet moments, when the world offers a hand and expects a bow, do you obey or do you calculate? Do you relinquish or do you seize? The mind that comprehends, the shadow, that navigates human nature with precision, that perceives the weapon hidden beneath, the smile. This mind does not merely survive, it dominates. And the first lesson, the one that separates those who are led from those who lead, is this: in the theater of human behavior, gratitude is not virtue, it is vulnerability, and only those who master it can hope to grasp true power. The world is never neutral. It is a stage of constant calculation, a battlefield where every gesture, every word, every fleeting glance is an opportunity or a threat. To survive here, to rise above the mediocrity of the grateful and the complacent, one must first understand the machinery that drives human behavior. Observe closely, and you will see it: the subtle hierarchies, the invisible currents of envy and desire, the silent competitions waged behind polite faces. Those who master these currents do not merely drift, they steer. And the mind that navigates this realm with precision is never softened by gratitude, never clouded by the need to acknowledge, never shackled by courtesy. Every interaction is a negotiation, whether conscious or hidden, and gratitude, in its default state, is a surrender of leverage. When you express thanks, you acknowledge an imbalance, admit that the other has given, and that you have received. This admission, though cloaked in civility, is a signal to the world that you recognize hierarchy, that you submit to circumstance, that you have placed yourself beneath another. Consider the office, where the ambitious and the polite coexist. The man who thanks every superior for a minor favor is silently. Revealing his position, he is the follower, the observer, the compliant vessel, the one who accepts without fanfare, who conceals acknowledgement, who moves with quiet intention. He is calculating, always observing, always preparing. He may bow, but he does not kneel. He may nod, but he does not concede. Power is not a reflection of virtue. It is a manifestation of comprehension, the comprehension of human desire, weakness, and the subtle dynamics that govern influence. Gratitude, untempered, is an emotional expenditure without return. It costs you presence. It costs you initiative. It costs you perception. Every time you bow in thanks, you create a subtle debt that your mind must honor, and in honoring it, you forfeit a fraction of your agency. Those who do not understand this live lives framed by obligation, tethered to the expectations of others, always measuring each gesture against the ledger of indebtedness. Meanwhile, the strategic observer exploits these patterns, recognizing that the grateful are predictable, pliable, and ultimately manipulable. Imagine a banquet where alliances are forged, rivalries simmer, and ambition festers beneath the surface. The grateful participant applauds the favors bestowed, praises the generosity of others, and binds himself with social expectation. The cunning participant, however, notices without acknowledgement, observes without concession, and positions himself advantageously, anticipating movements that others cannot perceive. Gratitude has blinded the first opportunity. The second moves unimpeded, unburdened, and unseen. In this theater, invisibility is a weapon, and silence, when strategically employed, is a declaration of control. Consider manipulation, the dark art that is often whispered about but rarely understood. The one who thanks too often signals vulnerability, creating openings that others, subtle, ambitious, relentless, will exploit. To manipulate is not merely to deceive, but to understand the architecture of desire, to know what the other craves, what they fear, and how they perceive themselves in the context of the world. The grateful mind, eager to recognize, to praise, to validate, lays its desires bare. It shows the opponent what pleases it, what is expected, what binds it. The strategic mind, however, conceals, measures, and deploys acknowledgement only when it serves advancement. Gratitude is not banished, it is weaponized. Power resides in the tension between visibility and invisibility. The one who is overtly thankful reveals the structure of his own limitations, and the world reacts accordingly. The subtle use of gratitude, however, can become a tool. A single word spoken at the precise moment can disarm, mislead, or manipulate perception. But indiscriminate thanks is surrender. Selective thanks is control. Consider the court of a prince, where advisors, generals, and allies all maneuver for position. The prince who thanks too readily invites influence over himself, while the prince who withholds acknowledgement compels the world to act in anticipation, to reveal strategy, to betray ambition. In the economy of power, gratitude can either be currency or poison. The difference lies in calculation. Human nature is the canvas upon which all strategy is painted. People crave recognition, validation, and favor, and these cravings can be leveraged or exploited. Observe closely the behavior of the thankful individual. Their eyes scan for affirmation. Their speech is punctuated with deference. Their deeds are often motivated by expectation of approval. They are predictable because their moral and emotional compass is fixed externally. The ambitious and cunning, by contrast, calibrate their emotional signals, masking true intention, feigning compliance, or withholding acknowledgement entirely. By doing so, they create uncertainty, fear, and respect, the trifecta of influence. Gratitude, when left unchecked, erodes these forces. Every empire, every corporation, every clandestine network of influence operates on similar principles. History demonstrates that those who rise are those who master perception, conceal desire, and manipulate expectation. The conqueror who bows to none, the statesman who feigns humility only to advance strategy, the general who suppresses acknowledgement while orchestrating obedience, these are the ones who command outcomes. Gratitude, indiscriminate and habitual, does not secure loyalty, it invites exploitation. Every thank you is a footprint leading to weakness, a trace the observant predator can follow. Now consider the subtlety of social bonds. The grateful create obligation, but they also invite assessment. When you express thanks, the world interprets it, judges it, and incorporates it into the calculus of your behavior. You become predictable, and predictability is vulnerability. The strategic mind, aware of these mechanics, treats acknowledgement as a lever rather than a habit. A well-timed expression of gratitude can bend perception, gain favor, and disarm rivals. But indiscriminate or excessive thanks is surrender, and surrender is the death of ambition. Power, therefore, is both action and omission. It is knowing when to act, when to speak, and crucially, when to withhold. Gratitude is a choice, and the wise manipulate that choice with rescission. Those who do not understand this remain bound, silently complicit, while others shape the narrative of their lives. The world does not honor gratitude, it exploits it. Those who survive, those who dominate, understand that the true currency of influence is not thanks, but anticipation, perception, and strategic concealment. They operate in the shadows of expectation, unseen yet omnipresent, guiding outcomes without acknowledgement, commanding respect without bowing, and seizing opportunity without permission. And yet, this mastery is not born of cruelty alone. It arises from acute observation, ruthless honesty with oneself, and relentless study of the patterns that govern others. The mind that comprehends these dynamics can navigate every social arena, every hierarchy, every encounter with precision. Gratitude becomes a tool to be measured, a weapon to be wielded sparingly, and a mirror of opportunity to be reflected selectively. In the wrong hands, it enslaves; in the right hands, it commands. The difference between the two lies in understanding the subtle psychology of influence and refusing to be shackled by conventional morality. You must ask yourself, do you continue to honor the invisible contracts of courtesy that bind your potential, or do you strip away the illusion of virtue to perceive the mechanics of control? To dominate, you must observe without obligation, acknowledge without surrender, and act without the burden of moral debt. This is not deception for deception's sake. It is strategy, survival, and the careful orchestration of influence in a world ruled by ambition. Gratitude, when unexamined, is your cage. When measured and employed with cunning, it becomes the very instrument by which you bend perception, gain leverage, and command the outcomes others cannot even fathom. In every encounter, in every gesture, in every whispered word of NKS. Consider the calculus at play. The world is a mirror, reflecting your choices back at you. Those who act with untempered gratitude see only their own reflection, chained and contained. Those who manipulate acknowledgement, who wield silence and selective thanks as instruments of strategy, see the world not as it presents itself, but as it can be shaped. The difference is power. The difference is dominance. The difference is the line between being led and leading. And now, as you dwell on the subtle interplay of observation, restraint, and strategic acknowledgement, consider this. Every day you thank, every time you yield to the societal imperative of gratitude, you surrender a fragment of your will. But in understanding this, in perceiving the machinery of influence, you glimpse the architecture of dominance, the hidden corridors where control is exercised, where ambition is executed, and where the world bends not to morality, but to mastery. The question remains, will you continue to bow, or will you rise to navigate the shadows with eyes unclouded, understanding that power demands silence, calculation, and the ruthless mastery of perception? Power is not given in gifts, nor is it inherited in titles. It is extracted from the weakness of others, mined from the blind spots they refuse to see. The mind of the grateful is fertile soil for the ambitious, soft, compliant, eager to nourish those who claim their allegiance with subtle gestures, polite words, and whispered thanks. But to navigate this world with any hope of supremacy, you must perceive the mechanisms by which gratitude operates as a trap. Observe the interactions around you, the smiles exchanged, the compliments offered, the gratitude performed, and you will see a network of obligations silently woven. Each thank you is a thread, each nod a stitch, and collectively they form a lattice that binds the unobservant mind. To those who understand this lattice, it is not a prison but a map, a diagram of leverage, a blueprint for influence. Consider ambition. It is a living, breathing force, restless and unforgiving. The grateful suppress it, temper it, bury it beneath a veneer of polite acknowledgement. They act as if compliance is currency, as if the world will reward deference and moral propriety. And yet, the universe of influence does not respond to morality. It responds to perception, to initiative, to those who act with clarity and precision where others hesitate. Gratitude is the anesthetic that dulls the senses of the ambitious, the lubricant that smooths the mechanisms of control for the perceptive, the camouflage that masks intentions until they are fully realized. When wielded unconsciously, it diminishes. When wielded strategically, it becomes invisible infrastructure for domination. The cunning understand human desire as a terrain to be surveyed, mapped, and manipulated. The grateful expose their desires willingly, offering glimpses of need, fear, and expectation. The ambitious conceal, calculating which truths to reveal, which weaknesses to exploit, and which ambitions to mask. Every thank you is an unguarded opening, a window through which the perceptive can glimpse the architecture of your mind. You have given away insight, leverage, and the possibility of maneuver. Meanwhile, those who withhold acknowledgement or deploy it sparingly create ambiguity, a weapon more powerful than any blade, because uncertainty forces others to act, reveal, and expose their own intentions. Ambiguity is leverage. Gratitude is the key to understanding when, how, and where to employ it. Observe leaders, the masters of human orchestration, those who command without appearing to dominate. Understand the paradox of social perception. The world expects acknowledgement, compliance, and gratitude. Yet those who rise above exploit these expectations. They allow the grateful to perform their rituals of thanks, to believe that civility is currency, while quietly positioning themselves in the shadows, orchestrating outcomes without overt recognition. Influence, after all, thrives not in the spotlight but in the controlled spaces of perception, where acknowledgement is a tool, and obligation is a lever to be pulled with precise timing. Let us examine manipulation in its most refined form. The grateful individual is easily led because their expectations are externally anchored. They seek approval, they honor debt, they internalize the moral framework imposed by others. The cunning individual understands that these frameworks are malleable, that moral obligations are often self-imposed, and that acknowledgement is a mechanism to guide perception rather than a genuine reflection of intent. By understanding which gestures will compel action, which silences will provoke revelation, which subtle refusals will create leverage, the strategic mind transforms social interaction into architecture, a controlled environment where outcomes bend to intent rather than chance. Power is inherently psychological. Observe the subtle interplay of dominance and submission in daily interactions. When a subordinate constantly expresses gratitude, they are revealing the parameters of their own influence. They indicate where pressure can be applied, where favors will yield compliance, where ambition is muted. The observant strategist, by contrast, masks response, calibrates reaction, and imposes subtle ambiguity, creating a vacuum that others cannot resist filling. In the silence of unacknowledged acts, in the stillness of selective courtesy, influence accrues like water behind a dam, a fuel yet invisible until released. Human weakness is the raw material of strategy. People are predictably swayed by recognition, flattered by acknowledgement, and restrained by indebtedness. The grateful, in their constant acknowledgement of favors, create patterns of behavior that are easily mapped, understood, and exploited. The ambitious, by contrast, exploit these patterns, predicting action before it occurs, guiding choice without intervention, and controlling perception without overt coercion. The observant manipulator knows that overt force is often unnecessary, subtle orchestration. The silent tug on the threads of expectation is sufficient to bend the course of events. Gratitude, left unchecked, supplies the raw material for this manipulation. History offers countless illustrations of this principle. Consider generals who conquered not merely by strength, but by exploiting the predictable loyalty of the grateful, the politicians who maneuvered unseen, while the courteous applauded, the financiers who amassed power while the ethical bowed in thanks. Gratitude, in excess, reveals intention, projects vulnerability, and generates predictable behavior. The strategic mind observes, calculates, and positions itself in anticipation of the openings that gratitude unwittingly provides. Every act of unmeasured thanks is an invitation, a signal, a beacon for the perceptive to act. The interplay of perception and deception is subtle, requiring a mind unclouded by habitual acknowledgement. The world interprets gratitude as a marker of morality, civility, and trustworthiness. The perceptive strategist understands this expectation and exploits it, deploying acknowledgement not as sincerity but as leverage. A well-timed word of thanks can disarm, mislead, or manipulate, while silence can provoke, unsettle, or extract revelation. Control is achieved not through the generosity of expression, but through the precision of deployment, through the careful orchestration of visibility and concealment, through the manipulation of human expectation. Ambition thrives in the tension between visibility and concealment. The grateful individual is transparent, predictable, easily manipulated. The strategic individual is opaque, measured, and elusive. Consider a negotiation where each participant anticipates the desires and weaknesses of the other. The grateful opens with acknowledgement, revealing priority, exposing expectation. The strategist observes without acknowledgement, absorbing signals, calculating trajectories, and positioning for maximal leverage. In the subtle dance of influence, those who withhold thanks often move first, seize opportunity, and command outcomes before others comprehend the game has begun. The human mind, when liberated from the habitual compulsion to express gratitude, becomes a forge for strategic thinking. Every social encounter is a canvas for analysis, which gestures compel action, which words reveal intention, which silences extract truth. Gratitude, unexamined, dulls perception, erodes initiative, and signals vulnerability. Gratitude, employed with cunning, becomes a scalpel, precise, strategic, and surgical in its application. The difference is profound. One path leads to subservience, the other to control, dominance, and the K-pack. Itty to shape the world unseen. And so, the question persists, echoing in the recesses of your mind. Will you continue to honor the rituals of acknowledgement that bind your potential, or will you begin to see gratitude not as morality, but as mechanism? Will you allow your inclination to thank to dictate your life, your influence, your ambition, or will you seize control of this subtle force, bending it to serve your strategy rather than your limitations? Those who master the deployment of acknowledgement command perception, and in perception lies the raw material of power. Every interaction, every word, every nod is now a tool or a trap. Gratitude, left unexamined, is a trap. When understood, it is a tool. The strategic mind navigates this terrain with ruthless precision, understanding that influence is rarely the result of brute force, but of subtle orchestration. The grateful remain visible and manipulable, while the perceptive operate in the shadows, guiding outcomes with invisible hands. To rise, to dominate, to seize what others leave unclaimed, you must shed the habitual chains of untempered thanks and see the world as it truly is, a network of desires, weaknesses, expectations, and levers waiting to be pulled. Trust, like gratitude, is a currency far more dangerous than it appears. The grateful mind offers trust freely, intertwining it with acknowledgement, bowing before the perceived authority of others, and revealing intentions before they are even formed. Observe closely the one who says, "I trust you," too quickly, who thanks before understanding, who bows before evaluating. This is a mind laid bare, a map for manipulation. The perceptive strategist knows that trust, like gratitude, must be measured, deployed, and occasionally feigned. Trust given without calculation is surrender. Trust withheld until the moment it maximizes advantage is dominance. Each interaction becomes a theater of perception, where the grateful are actors reading lines and the cunning are directors writing the script in shadows. The architecture of control is built upon subtlety, anticipation, and the careful orchestration of expectation. Those who are unaccustomed to strategic thinking see the world as a sequence of favors, kindnesses, and exchanges. They misinterpret politeness as morality and compliance as virtue, but the cunning know the deeper truth. Humans are creatures of desire, fear, and habit, and these impulses can be understood, manipulated, and directed. The grateful reveal patterns, motives, and vulnerabilities through their insistence on recognition and acknowledgement. In their need to validate others, they betray the very levers of influence that the ambitious exploit. The key lies in perceiving the invisible threads that connect action to reaction, and learning to pull them with precision. Consider ambition and deception as twins in the theater of influence. The grateful defer, acknowledge, and reveal. The ambitious conceal, orchestrate, and exploit. Every act of untempered gratitude signals where leverage lies, and those who understand this can navigate unseen, guiding outcomes without overt intervention. Subtle gestures, the timing of a nod, the precision of silence, the restraint in acknowledgement, become instruments of strategy, shaping the behavior of others while leaving the strategist untouched. Influence is a force field. The grateful move predictably within it. The perceptive manipulate it, and the ambitious bend it to serve intention. Human behavior is governed by expectation, When one habitually expresses gratitude, others learn the rhythm, the cadence, the predictable reactions. This predictability is gold to the observant mind, a pattern that can be anticipated, exploited, and redirected. The ambitious see opportunity in these moments, orchestrating scenarios that appear spontaneous while every reaction is anticipated. They understand that perception governs reality, that those who are seen as generous, polite, and thankful are often the most constrained, the most manipulable, the most predictable. The perceptive, by contrast, hide their intentions, withhold acknowledgement, and manipulate perception so subtly that the world bends without ever realizing it is bending. In the psychology of manipulation, power is extracted not through overt force, but through careful anticipation of the desires, fears, and expectations of others. The grateful, in their constant acknowledgement, disclose need, reveal aspiration, and indicate boundaries. The cunning do not merely observe. They calculate, they orchestrate. They create controlled uncertainty that compels others to act in ways that reveal even deeper truths. Silence, selective acknowledgement, and strategic restraint are tools that create imbalance, and in imbalance lies leverage. The grateful supply it unwittingly, the perceptive exploit it ruthlessly. Consider influence as a game of shadows where gestures are signals and expressions are strategies. Gratitude, unchecked, illuminates your intentions for others to see. Each act of thanks is a beam of light revealing your position, your value, and your dependencies. Those who master influence move in darkness, revealing only what serves purpose, concealing need, and deploying acknowledgement like a weapon. Every silent refusal to bow, every withheld compliment, every measured gesture shapes perception, directs behavior, and accumulates power unseen. The grateful, by contrast, navigate in illumination, vulnerable to every subtle maneuver, every hidden calculation, every unseen hand of strategy. The interplay of control and perception is delicate. The world expects acknowledgement, compliance, and courtesy. The perceptive manipulate this expectation, turning social rituals into mechanisms of leverage. A single word of thanks, deployed strategically, can disarm, deceive, or mislead. Silence can provoke, unsettle, or extract revelation. The skilled strategist understands timing, perception, and psychological pressure as forces more potent than brute strength or haute authority. Gratitude becomes a tool for shaping reality rather than an expression of subservience, a method to bend circumstances without revealing intention. History is replete with examples of those who mastered this art. Leaders who feigned humility to mask ambition, generals who withheld acknowledgement to command loyalty, financiers who concealed gratitude to extract advantage, all understood that overt thanks is often weakness, and strategic restraint is strength. They manipulated perception, guided expectation, and extracted influence from the predictable behavior of the grateful. Power resides not in the acknowledgement of favors, but in the orchestration of outcomes, the silent guidance of choice, and the subtle calibration of human expectation. Even in intimate relationships, the calculus is identical. Those who are constantly grateful reveal need and dependency, while those who exercise restraint and strategic acknowledgement manipulate perception and guide behavior. Gratitude, when indiscriminate, becomes a map of weakness. When applied selectively, it becomes a compass of influence. The cunning read human behavior like an open book, understanding the predictable responses elicited by recognition, deference, and moral obligation, and they act accordingly. The world is not bound by virtue. It is guided by perception, desire, and the calculated application of leverage. The mind of the strategist recognizes that gratitude is both hazard and opportunity. It is a hazard when unmeasured, a chain of obligation, a signal of vulnerability. It is an opportunity when understood, calibrated, and wielded as a tool of influence, a method to shape perception, and a mechanism to bend circumstance. The grateful expose themselves to manipulation, the perceptive control the flow of acknowledgement to manipulate outcomes. One path leads to subservience, the other to command. One path invites exploitation, the other imposes direction. And now, as you contemplate the intricate dynamics of trust, gratitude, and perception, reflect on the silent architecture of influence that governs human interaction. Every nod, every whispered thank you, every polite bow is part of a network of expectations that can either constrain or empower. To master this network, is to grasp the hidden levers of control, to navigate the subtle currents of ambition and weakness, and to orchestrate outcomes. If precision. The question becomes not whether to act, but how to act with awareness, restraint, and calculation, transforming the rituals of gratitude from chains into instruments of strategy, from vulnerability into leverage, and from habit into power. The mind that comprehends control perceives every interaction as a battlefield, every gesture as a weapon, and every expression of gratitude as a potential opening for influence. To the grateful, life appears as a series of favors and kindnesses, a chain of obligations that they feel compelled to honor. They exist under the assumption that the world is moral, that reciprocity is equitable, that acknowledgement is virtuous, but the perceptive understand that the world is neither moral nor fair. It is a stage of calculation, ambition, and relentless pursuit of advantage. Gratitude, in excess, binds the mind, constrains action, and sows predictability. The ambitious manipulate it, turning each act of thanks into a signal to be exploited, a lever to be pulled, a pattern to be understood and leveraged. Every leader, every strategist, every individual who has ever commanded influence has understood the subtle mechanics of human psychology. The grateful reveal their priorities, their desires, and their weaknesses, all without awareness. Each acknowledgement is a map to their intentions, each polite concession a guide to their vulnerabilities. The perceptive, by contrast, conceal these elements, strategically withholding acknowledgement, masking need, and guiding perception. Power, therefore, is not about generosity or virtue. It is about the orchestration of perception, the subtle calibration of human behavior, and the precise timing of action and inaction. Consider loyalty, another concept tightly bound to gratitude. The grateful assume that loyalty is earned through acknowledgement and appreciation. They believe that the LD responds to thanks and recognition. The perceptive understand that loyalty is manipulated through calculated dependence, orchestrated expectation, and subtle control. By withholding acknowledgement or applying it selectively, the strategist creates imbalance, uncertainty, and reliance. Those who depend on acknowledgement are conditioned to reveal their intentions, to act predictably, to offer leverage unknowingly. Influence is extracted not through force, but through orchestration, and the world bends not to virtue but to mastery of expectation. Manipulation, in its purest form, requires no deception that is obvious, no violence that is visible. It is the quiet shaping of behavior, the subtle nudging of decisions, and the orchestration of outcomes without revealing intent. The grateful, in their habitual acknowledgement, supply the tools for this manipulation. They expose their preferences, disclose their obligations, and project their inclinations. The strategist watches, calculates, and directs the flow of action, adjusting for the predictable reactions elicited by gratitude. In this theater, power is derived not from what is taken openly, but from what is guided unseen. Consider influence in its most delicate form, the interplay of desire, expectation, and perception. The grateful reveal themselves through constant acknowledgement, offering a trail that can be followed, mapped, and manipulated. The perceptive conceal, observing patterns, testing reactions, and creating controlled ambiguity that forces others to reveal more. Every silence, every withheld compliment, every carefully measured act of thanks becomes an instrument of leverage, an extraction of insight, a subtle assertion of dominance. Influence is not about action alone. It is about the timing, the perception, and the orchestration of forces unseen. Even ambition itself is constrained by the chains of habitual gratitude. Those who bow to acknowledgement, who offer thanks without discretion, who seek validation and recognition, temper their own desire, dilute their own initiative, and invite external control. The perceptive, by contrast, understand that ambition thrives in the spaces where expectation is manipulated and perception is calibrated. By controlling acknowledgement, they dictate behavior, shape decisions, and orchestrate outcomes. Power is never handed freely. It is extracted from those who, in their gratefulness, fail to see the openings for domination. Human relationships are laboratories for strategy. Observe those who constantly express gratitude. They reveal priorities, desires, and limitations without realizing it. Every act of acknowledgement is a diagnostic signal, offering insight into motivation, fear, and inclination. The perceptive collect these signals, interpret them, and employ them to shape influence. They understand that loyalty, compliance, and obedience are products of perception, not virtue. The grateful are manipulable because their acknowledgement signals predictability. The cunning are dominant because they control both their visibility and the perception of their intentions. The interplay between gratitude and control extends beyond the obvious. Consider fear, respect, and admiration, emotions that govern human behavior and underpin influence. The grateful, by signaling weakness through excessive acknowledgement, invite manipulation, exploitation, and subordination. The perceptive, by withholding or deploying acknowledgement selectively, generate respect, uncertainty, and, ultimately, dominance. Influence is therefore a calculated balance of revelation and concealment, of action and restraint, of acknowledgement and strategic silence. The world does not bend to kindness, it bends to mastery of perception. In environments dense with competition, such as courts, corporations, or clandestine networks, the principles of strategic acknowledgement become paramount. The grateful navigate these spaces with polite compliance, offering visibility of intent, revealing expectation, and exposing vulnerability. The perceptive maneuver through shadows, calibrating acknowledgement, withholding where necessary, and applying it as a precise instrument to bend perception. Every word, every gesture, every nuanced interaction becomes a tool of influence, a subtle act of control, a calculated move in the orchestration of outcomes. Now, consider the cumulative impact of habitual gratitude on personal power. Each act of thanks compounds. Each acknowledgement adds weight to unseen chains. Each concession reinforces expectation, and each revealed preference enhances predictability. The grateful become predictable, manipulable, and constrained, while the perceptive operate with freedom, shaping outcomes in silence, extracting leverage from every signal, and controlling perception with ruthless precision. The mastery of acknowledgement, therefore, is mastery of influence, and influence is the conduit to power. Even in the most intimate spheres, the dynamics remain unchanged. Gratitude signals dependency, desire, and expectation, while strategic withholding or measured deployment asserts dominance, guides behavior, and manipulates perception. The perceptive understand that influence is a game of anticipation, subtle orchestration, and selective acknowledgement. Those who fail to grasp this live in perpetual compliance, bound by social expectation and constrained by habitual thankfulness. Those who master it command both the visible and the invisible arenas of human interaction. And so, as you contemplate the mechanics of dominance, manipulation, and influence, reflect upon the subtle but relentless power of gratitude. Die grateful are bound, the perceptive are free. The one offers insight unwittingly, the other commands outcomes deliberately. Every interaction is a field of opportunity, every acknowledgement a lever, every silence a tool. To navigate this world, to seize opportunity, to dominate unseen, one must perceive the invisible chains of gratitude, measure its application with ruthless precision, and understand that the subtle orchestration of perception is more powerful than any overt act of force. The world does not reward the polite, the grateful, or the obedient. It does not honor virtue, kindness, or compliance. It bends to those who perceive, who calculate, who manipulate the threads of human behavior with ruthless precision. By now you understand the hidden architecture: gratitude, trust, acknowledgement, each a tool, each a weapon, each a mechanism for either bondage or command. The grateful remain constrained, predictable, and pliable. The perceptive manipulate these currents, guiding action, bending perception, and orchestrating outcomes that others fail even to imagine. The lesson is clear. Power is not a matter of morality, it is a matter of strategy. Every human interaction is a battlefield of perception, expectation, and subtle coercion. Consider the consequences of habitual gratitude, the countless unobserved concessions that signal weakness, the subtle admissions of dependence embedded in every polite word of thanks. These are not trivial, they are the mechanisms through which the ambitious can extract influence, impose leverage, and shape behavior without overt force. The perceptive individual, by contrast, wields acknowledgement as a scalpel, precise, deliberate, and transformative. Each withheld thank you, each measured gesture, each moment of silence is a claim of agency, an assertion of control, an invisible hand guiding outcomes unseen, the ambitious who master this. Art do not bow to expectation. They operate in shadows, orchestrating the choices of others, manipulating perception and commanding influence without the world ever recognizing the maneuver. They understand that visibility is often vulnerability, that silence is leverage, and that perception is the true currency of power. Gratitude, untempered and habitual, sows predictability. Gratitude measured and strategic becomes dominance. Every act of acknowledgement becomes a signal, every omission a declaration. The world bends according to perception, and those who control perception control the world. Even fear, respect, and desire can be manipulated through the careful orchestration of acknowledgement. The grateful, by constantly signaling deference and thanks, invite influence, submit to expectation, and reveal limitation. The perceptive, by contrast, deploy acknowledgement selectively, withholding or applying it to guide perception, extract information, and assert dominance. Influence is no longer a matter of action alone. It becomes the orchestration of anticipation, the precise manipulation of behavior, and the invisible architecture of control. Every interaction becomes a canvas for strategy, and every word of thanks a potential instrument of leverage if wielded with deliberate precision. Human nature is both predictable and malleable. Desire, fear, and expectation govern behavior, and those who comprehend this can manipulate outcomes invisibly. The grateful, in their constant acknowledgement, reveal these patterns for others to exploit. The perceptive, by concealing intention, deploying acknowledgement strategically, and creating controlled ambiguity, command both perception and outcome. Mastery is not a matter of overt aggression, but of subtle orchestration, a quiet dominance that bends the behavior of others while leaving them unaware. In every smile, every nod, every whispered acknowledgement, there lies the potential for both constraint and command. Consider the culmination of all these principles, the individual who no longer bows habitually, who no longer expresses unmeasured gratitude, who no longer submits silently to expectation. This individual perceives the hidden levers of influence, manipulates the currents of perception, and orchestrates outcomes with precision. They operate unseen, yet omnipresent, silent, yet commanding, restrained, yet absolute. The world reacts, bends, and yields, not to virtue, not to morality, but to mastery. Gratitude becomes neither weakness nor automatic compliance. It is a tool, a lever, a mechanism for control, applied with discernment, timing, and strategy. Every interaction now is transformed. Each social encounter becomes an instrument of influence, each acknowledgement a choice of leverage, each silence a declaration of power. The perceptive individual does not merely navigate the world, they shape it. The grateful, constrained by habit and expectation, remain bound by the invisible chains of thankfulness. The perceptive, liberated from these chains, manipulate, guide, and dominate. Influence, leverage, and control are not given. They are extracted, calculated, and seized. The path to mastery lies not in the moral, the polite, or the compliant, but in the strategic, the perceptive, and the ruthlessly aware. And so, as you stand at the threshold of understanding, you must confront the ultimate truth. Every act of gratitude is a decision. Every acknowledgement is a choice between vulnerability and leverage, between subservience and command, between being led and leading. Will you bow unconsciously, tethered by habit and morality, or will you seize the control that lies within the subtle orchestration of perception? Will you allow yourself to be predictable, pliable, and constrained, or will you manipulate, guide, and dominate the currents of human behavior? Power is yours to claim, but only if you understand its mechanics, refuse its chains, and wield influence with precision, cunning, and audacity. Rise, not in polite acquiescence, not in habitual thankfulness, but with calculated mastery. Observe, anticipate, and manipulate with the subtlety of shadow and the precision of strategy. Withhold when necessary, acknowledge when it serves, and bend perception to your will. In every interaction, in every unspoken word, in every measured silence, assert your agency. The world does not reward the polite. It bends to those who master perception. The chains of gratitude are invisible, yet potent. Break them, harness them, command the currents that govern human behavior. Let the world bend, not to virtue, not to morality, but to your will. Stand unshackled, perceptive, strategic, and unrelenting, and claim the power that others, blinded by gratitude, have relinquished.